Thank you, everybody, for being here with us today. And I am Lynn Schmaltz with Plasma Energy Solution. And this is Paul Schmaltz. And I will let him start out with a few words about plasma energy.
Well, plasma is a term that's floated around in a lot of circles, and it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. The scientists that study it think about it one way, and the spiritual people think about it another way. There's lots of terms for it, such as 0-point energy, torsion fields, plasma. It's all the same thing. It's the energy that keeps the planets from bumping into each other. And it's the energy of all things. All things come from plasma. It's a subject that would take many, many hours to explore and has many different applications in all aspects of health, healing, life, and everything we do. It's just that the knowledge of plasma has not been dispersed to the general public the way it should have been. It's nothing new. It's been around a long, long time. There are scientists who work for private labs, government labs, who have been studying plasma energy and its effects and its use in space travel for 40, 50 years. They just haven't told the general public about it. Thanks to Mehran Kesh, a nuclear physicist from Iran, this information has hit the mainstream, and many, many people are starting to learn about it. We are in the infancy of learning all of the aspects of plasma energy. We're using it mainly for health applications, but there are many applications in energy, travel, all kinds of things, food production, agriculture. Our focus is on health, all the health aspects. So with that, I'll give it back to Lynn, and we'll go from here.
Okay, and one thing I'm going to ask Paul, because we were sitting by the creek where we live last week, and I said, well, so tell me about the plasma energy in the creek, which I got the look, what the family calls the look, the Paul look. But anyway, I thought he had a really good explanation about it. So would you cover that real quickly, and then we'll move on?
All I said was, well, there's plasma energy in the water, above the water, all around the water, and it's up to us to figure out how to use it correctly. So I don't know, what else did I say? I didn't memorize it.
Well, no, it was basically, you can't see it, but it's there with the creek, around the creek, you know, near the creek, in the creek. And the reason I had brought that up is a couple years in the spring, we would go to the farther up the creek, not without a paddle, but with our bottle of plasma energy water, and we would add some to the creek with the intention that it was for the well-being of all living things that came in contact with the creek. Well, that's kind of a big statement when you think about it, because if there's water evaporating from, you know, from above and traveling across, there's some of the intention of what we had in the creek. But the creek downloads into the Yellowstone River, which goes into the Missouri River, which goes into the Mississippi River, which goes into the Gulf of Mexico. So my whole idea was, in talking about intention, water carries intention, as we know from Masaru Emoto and the messages from water. It's, what is your intention that you add to the water that you have? Well, then if you think of what we are, which is more than 70% water, what intentions do we carry with us? And we live in a small town. There are a real small handful of people that have embraced information about the plasma water, and that's really okay. Others will be ready at some point in time, but in the meantime, I slosh by them all the time. I'm full of plasma. They don't know it. So I kind of love that aspect of it. And so whatever intention I carry with me, and that's something I kind of need to be mindful of. You know, what am I carrying around with me today? And what might be emanating from my plasma energy water intentions? So what we'd like to do is share some of the things that we do with the plasma energy water. And it's for people, pets, plants. They're all going to benefit from the plasma energy water. And there are some who have studied with agriculture and having tremendous results with it. There's farmers in Australia who put a lot of films online of their hydroponic farming operation. And they took a couple of water bottles, just plastic water bottles that they filled with the plasma water they had made, and they put it into the circulating waters. They hung it in the waters that traveled through several greenhouses and through their fish tanks and back. And what they found was the fish became more active, but also their production went up significantly. And one of the really amazing things for them was, in their summer down there, when it's so hot, the air is hot, the building's hot, the water's hot, and it was a lettuce production. They showed pictures of the lettuce, and it was kind of wimpy looking, and the roots were kind of brownish. It was just from the heat. Once they added the plasma water, the plants were vigorous, the roots were white, and they more than increased their production 50%. So they were pretty excited with the results they were seeing. And those are some of the things that people are seeing with agriculture. I get pictures from people all the time from their gardens, and one woman in Washington State sent me pictures of her orchids, and she said, I've never had my orchids last this long. And she sent them to me in June, and then she sent them to me in July, and then she sent them to me in August. Well, finally the orchids were done in August, but she said they've never lasted that long. So she's the same woman that sent me a picture of her tomato plant out in her garden, and honest to goodness, it was a tree. She was standing next to it, and unless she's 3 foot high, it was a very tall tomato plant. So that's some of the aspects for the gardens that you can look at. Another thing we do with the plasma water, what got Paula and I started with it was, what if this was about the time of the earthquakes in Norcia, Italy. What if there was a disaster where we lived and we could not get groceries? There's one grocery store. So what if the food trucks weren't running or they couldn't get in? Well, you know, they're going to run out. And so what could we do? So Paul made a GANS, which is gas in an atomic nano solid state of food. But we also added vitamins and supplements and herbs and homeopathics. I was on a roll. Once I decided the truck wasn't going to make a delivery in my imagination, it was, well, what's everything I would want in here? And so then he also had some of the basic things you start out with in the plasma energy that I'll let him explain about. But we ended up with 16 items that we put on what we call our plasma energy station. And what I'm going to show you is, this is how I mail the 16 vials. They're small glass vials of the plasma energy station. Well, our next step with that was, well, okay, now that we have it, what are we going to do? So we decided we were going to try 10 days with no food. And we were only going to use the plasma energy station. And we got to 3 days, and so far we were not dizzy, we didn't have headaches, we weren't cranky, we had plenty of energy. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of social conditioning around food, and we really missed that aspect. It was very weird, you know, not to prepare food, sit down and eat the food. And so what we finally did is we ended up with a couple wine glasses, and we pour our water in it. And we'd have breakfast, and I'd say, well, what are you having for breakfast? And Paul would come up with his breakfast, and I'd look at mine, and I'd say, I'm having eggs Benedict this morning. And so we bless our glasses of our plasma energy water and drink it. And that was what we were doing in lieu of a meal. Well, our son lives nearby, and they invited us to a family dinner about 3 days into our experiment. So we got there, and so we did eat a dish meal, and we're going, oh, it's kind of nice to eat food, isn't it? And he's going, what are you guys doing? You know, so he was there the next day to say, all right, what's going on? What are you doing? And so Paul explained it all to him. And so I asked him, I said, well, are you hungry? Would you like something? What would you like? He said, I think I'd like some popcorn. I make a spicy popcorn. Sure. And I bring him a glass of water, and he's drinking it, and he stops and looks at me, and he said, well, is this supposed to taste like popcorn or anything? I said, no, it's going to provide for you the energy you would have had you had the popcorn. That's the whole idea of the energy fields that are stored. So we continued on for the 10 days. We ended up with 3 dish meals in the 10 days. And we were satisfied at that point. Yes, you could do this as a supplement to what you have on hand. If you're trying to stretch your supplies, this is definitely doable. And so what I'd like to have Paul take a minute to explain is what the GANs are, the gas in an atomic nanosolid state. And you have a jar there that we brought of the CO2 and the copper oxide GANs.
Yeah, what we refer to as GANs is this powder in the bottom, and you can see that it's a very fine powder that what we do is we shake it up like this and then let it settle, and we use the water on top. We don't use the powder part because the water has the memory or the charge, or you could even call this powder at the bottom a battery that charges the water, and the water is what we use. So all of this material in the bottom will last for hundreds of years just using the water off the top. And to make this powder that's in the bottom, depending on what it is that you're trying to make, is it's a long process. Like if you're making an herbal GANs, like we did for thyroid, then you take all your herbs and put it in with sodium hydroxide, which is lye, and it breaks it all down into a monoatomic state. That is, it breaks all of the molecules into single atoms. And when these atoms are not in combination with other materials, they, for a simple explanation, they have a plasmatic field that is attracting or repelling electrons trying to get back to their molecular structure. That's the plasmatic field that we're using to charge the water with. And the process of making the GANs, it takes about anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks to break down an herbal combination into the monoatomic state. For metals like copper, silver, magnesium, gold, it takes not quite as long, but you use a totally different process. It's similar to electrolysis, but it's not really electrolysis. It's a saltwater solution with plates of nano-coated copper and plates of the metal that you're trying to collect, like magnesium or brass or silver or whatever it is that you're trying to collect. And with that process, you have to do it slowly in order to get the fine material like you see here. If you do it too fast, you get a colloid rather than a suspension like this. You get a colloid that is bigger particles, and you don't want that. You want monoatomic particles. So that process usually takes about a month. And then it has to be rinsed. You got to rinse all the salt water out of it and let it settle between rinses. And then when you're done, you add a few other special things, such as hemoglobin GANs that you've made separately, amino acid GANs that you've made separately to make it all compatible with the human body. And then that's what we put in the vials for a finished product. So in a quick overview, that's what the GANs is.
And when we send things out, then what we're sending is the water off the top. And at this point, we have over 3 dozen containers of different combinations of water that Paul has put together. And I can go through some of those. And what I want to show you is there's so many ways to use this other than just as the drinking water and the support for the body. And I use a lot of spray bottles. I have a lot of these around. And if you look in the bottom, you might be able to see a little vial. You'll see a little black lid. There's a little glass vial in the bottom of this spray bottle. And so that is acting just like the GANs is in Paul's jar over here. So that's what's going to activate the water that we add to this. And we're going to add filtered or distilled or high quality well or spring water to this. And this one happens to say pain relief. Well, what I do with pain relief, if I'm making a pair of gloves, and people often ask me, well, how long does this last? Does it wear out? Does it have an expiration date? So I'm going to show you a very sad looking pair of gloves because they've been through the mill. And they still have plasma energy in them. Okay, these started out as my little white gloves. I cut the fingertips off because I wear them when I'm typing and if my hands start getting sore or fatigued. And so they just, I mean, you know, they're beautiful, right?
Elegant.
Yeah, they're a little gray tone. They picked up lint along the way in the washer, but they still work. And I'll put these under my pillow. And if I just wake up during the night and my hand is stiff or something, I'll just slip one of the gloves on. Well, one of the other things I've done with the glove, Paul had made a Gans, and I'll let him talk about this later, but this is like an eye patch. Well, you know, who wants to wear an eye patch to bed? So I can just put it in my glove and flop it over whatever eye I want to do. And the reason I would do an eye patch, I have there's a lazy eye that never wanted to come to work. And so the right eye does the work. And I was told years ago by an ophthalmologist, the right eye is going to be the working eye that gets the floaters. The left eye will never get the floaters. Well, sure enough, the floaters came along. But what I can report, and I'll let Paul talk about the eye drops here in a minute, is in using the eye drops that has been formulated, my floaters are no longer full fish with fins and tails and sea serpents or anything like that. There's an occasional dots that go across, but nothing like what they were before. Our son used them for dry eye, the eye drops, and he said it's the best drops he's ever had, and he was getting some pretty expensive drops to use during the day. And Paul used them for cataracts, and I'll let him tell about that.
Well, my cataracts are gone. I just renewed my driver's license with no glasses and no contact lenses. And I used the cataract Gans water for probably 3 or 4 months before I saw any results. But when I started seeing results, then they came pretty fast. And that's been about 3 years ago. And I'm now cataract free. And I was diagnosed by the ophthalmologist with cataracts and was going to have surgery at some point. But I'm not having surgery.
And you used to do surgery on animals for cataracts.
Right.
As a veterinarian. So, and just in the whole discussion about getting a driver's license, now are you 57 or 58 or what?
79.
Okay, that was a wishful back-looking time, right? Or sometimes we say youth is wasted on the young. And anyway, so now the other things we do with the water, and we have lots of different combinations. Clear Mind is one of them, and that's one we formulated after looking at research and everything, and what are the holistic practitioners doing for brain fog? You know, what are they doing for different brain issues? And so that's where we came up with the Clear Mind. And I was telling him downstairs that this a woman down south contacted me, and she said, you know, I put my Clear Mind on my zero water filter. She's in an area where there's got to be filtered water. And one of the suggestions we'd made is, you know, get yourself a big filtering unit and if you get one that has a spigot on it, you're going to use the water more often than if it's in a little jar or in a tub stuck off in a corner. And she said, I'm noticing that my filters are lasting longer. And so I communicated with her recently, and she said, yeah, they're still 6 to 8 weeks longer than she was accustomed to those filters lasting. So, and I have a zero water filter that I use, and I had noticed the same thing. So it was kind of nice to have that confirmed voluntarily from somebody who didn't know that I had noticed that. Now, one of the other things, you can take the plasma energy waters. This is something I do. This scarf, I've got lots of scarves that are treated, and if my neck gets tired, you know, just put the scarf around you and wear the neck, and you forget you've got a, you know, a little bit of a sore neck or whatever from focusing on something, maybe some work you're doing on the computer or whatever. And sure, you can wash the scarf again. You don't wash the plasma energy out. Once it's there, it's there.
Does that have the pain in it?
This one started out with station water, but the pain relief came quite some time later. And so what I would do at this point, where it already has one kind in it, is I just take this and saturate it with the spray bottle and hang it up to dry, fold it up, it's ready to go, okay? I tell people, put this in your laundry, whatever plasma water you want to incorporate with towels, sheets, clothing. When I do the laundry, I'll do an extra rinse at the very end, and I'll add 1 or 2 cups of plasma water and just let it sit there for a while. And I'll let it sit there maybe for about an hour, and then I'll spin it dry, run it through the dryer. That's taken care of. It doesn't have to be repeated, but I also don't have to remember now, what did I do? I can't remember what I've done and haven't done, because I just add it to all my rinse waters.
How long did you say? I'm sorry, I just got distracted.
About an hour.
Oh, that's it.
But if you use a liquid soap for your laundry and your hand soaps and everything else, you can add some plasma water to that. Mm. And I make my own mouthwash. I make a toothpaste. It's not market ready because it's gray, because it has charcoal in it. People aren't going to look at something gray and say, yeah, I want to whiten my teeth with that. So, but I always add plasma water, whatever I think is appropriate in that mix. I make my own face lotion and deodorants out of a combination of oils and coconut oil and hemp seed oil, and I might add some turmeric to it, depending on what it's for. I'll add plasma water to it, and you know, just stir it all up and utilize it that way. Another thing that we do, Paul developed rings that went around knees because he had an arthritic knee. Basic confirmation. If he was a racehorse, he wouldn't have made it to the track because it's a crooked knee, okay? And so he'd wear the rings during the day, but you don't want to sleep with these vinyl tubing rings around your knee. They're not going to be comfortable to sleep in. And so go ahead and show what you came up with on that.
What I did was took that same plasma water that I used in the rings and just put it on Band-Aids, regular Band-Aids, the ones with the fabric back. And you just take these and put 2 on one side and 1 on the other side. Or you can do them front and back, or side to side, wherever your pain is. And I was pretty dependent on those rings. I'd have to wear them every day or I couldn't hardly walk. And I haven't had them on for a month. I haven't worn them for a month, but I've been using these Band-Aids. And I just put them on and shower with them on and just leave them on until they fall off. And when they fall off, then I'll put a new batch on. And they usually last a week to 2 weeks, one set. So it's, you know, it's a cheap way to do it. And it's very effective. It's this knee was the one that was giving me trouble for a long, long time, and now this one is starting to also, so I wear it on both of them. And I don't have any pain in either knee. I know they're not perfect, but they make, these Band-Aids make it functional.
Did you say you put 2 on one side and 1 on the other to?
Right.
Okay.
Could you use, like I have Band-Aid that is double, like it's the size of 2 Band-Aids, so couldn't you use just one double Band-Aid on the front and then the single in the back? Would that be the same?
Yeah.
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 And Maria
So I have a question. Are you getting the fabric on the outside soaked,
Yes.
or just the little white patch in there of the Band-Aid?
You just soak the gauze.
The gauze.
I just soak the
The
gauze.
gauze.
Just the
The
gauze.
white stuff.
Just the
Yeah,
just
the
a
gauze.
little
Just that little
just a
tiny
little square in the middle, yeah.
That's what's so
I
nice
put
about
about
using a big
seven
Band-Aid.
drops of Gans water on each Band-Aid and let them dry completely.
Right.
And then after they're all dry, then I can start using them.
Is there magic about this number 7, or is that just?
No,
Okay.
There's nothing magic about it. That's just how many drops it takes to saturate that size of a.
Yeah.
Highly
Tab.
scientific. Got it.
I can tell you when I make them, I probably did more than 7 drops because I had a little sloppiness around it.
Okay.
He's the precision guy, and I'm the some cook. So, Louise, did you have a question?
I made a special one for Ted because he had trouble with one knee. And it was one that you can buy, and it's about so big, oh, maybe 8 inches, and you just pull it on. It's kind of elastic type. And I soaked that, and that's what
Nice.
he pulls on when he goes running. And he
Nice.
loves that.
Excellent.
And I soaked a pair of pajamas because I foolishly went out and did a whole bunch of yard work right after we got back on a trip, and my body was not ready for all the aches and pains of being 6 hours out there trying to weed and clean the yard up after being gone. And I ate, so I soaked a pair of pajamas. My winter pajamas I had ready because it was winter and I had it then, but I didn't have anything ready for summer pajamas. So I soaked the summer pajamas, kind of forgot about them and sitting in the sink in the laundry. But eventually I got them hanging and dried, and I wear them to bed at night. So I'm wearing pain pajamas every night, and I am totally free of
Nice.
pain. It's amazing.
That's
It's
really
totally
nice.
amazing.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, all my sheets are.
Oh, and all the
yeah.
sheets.
I don't think I have
Pillows.
pain in them though. Maybe that we should do that.
Yeah.
Add pain.
The pain
And
is-
you know, you can layer things. You don't have to just have one item in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you can add different things. It's kind of like making a soup. Well, what all do I want in the soup? You
Yeah, I
know?
feel like a witch's brew a little.
yeah.
Well, and speaking of soup, use your plasma water. We use it to drink. We use it to make coffee. We use it to make tea, to make soup, whatever you're baking with. We had one woman who said, well, I'm kind of known as a champion pie baker. And somebody talked me into making my pie crust with plasma water. And she says, I have to tell you, it's the best crust I ever made. So that was kind of a neat thing because bakers can be a little fussy about changing recipes if they have a champion mode. The size does not matter. with the plasma energy, and I'm going to show you what I mean by size. Here's another set, and there's the 2, and there's the 1. They're going to work just as well as Paul's bigger set. When I doused the energy fields, this was a couple of years ago, and I wanted to see what they were with the patches that we were sending out of the country. And usually what we send is something that's about the half size of a dinner napkin. And so I took our 16 vials and I doused the fields, and it was over 30 feet. Well, then I got one of the lunch size pairs that I send, and I'm thinking, well, you know, what's this going to be, 18 feet? It was over 30 feet. And then I took a Post-it note size pair that I'd made, doused them, it was over 30 feet. Size did not matter. So I send things overseas and out of the country as paper patches, but I had a family in one country that did not get their mail delivered to them. It evidently was, didn't pass muster. And so they never got their letter, and they emailed me and said, we don't know what to do. And I said, I know what to do. Here's what I'm going to do. This is printer paper. I sprayed it with our plasma energy station water. And I sent them, and I said, you're going to get something with me with a few words on it, but there's more in the paper. When you get it, follow the instructions. We have instructional videos. Follow the instructions on how to make your patches, which you're going to do. They're going to fold them, and then they're going to fold them more into whatever size they want, okay? And so they had enough for 2 different family members. Well, I didn't hear back from them. I knew it was going to work because I'd done it before for someone that had somewhat restricted mail delivery, is the way I'll put it. And they got a letter from me that was on this kind of paper. Well, then he wrote to me and ordered something several months later, and he said, we want this and we want this. We love the water. I'm a healer and a therapist. It's great. I love the water. By the way, would you send our order on printer paper? So when people get really fussy about, well, I really wanted vials or this or that, I say, look, it's going to work on anything. If I send it to you on a handkerchief, it's going to work. So there's something that we have that's called a Plasmatic first aid chart. And this takes specific kinds of plasma energy on it, but it has different combinations to tell people what to do. Say you were in a situation and this was going to be your first aid station. Okay, so this is some information there. CO2 and zinc and CH3, which is a booster, copper oxide and amino acids are going to be your first aid, what you would have in your first aid chart. And Paul, do you want to take over and talk about the newest area? Give me just a minute. I'll wrap up here with some of the new things we've just come out with. We had a doctor down in the southern part of the country who said, I'm really concerned if there were ever an interruption in medical deliveries of prescriptions and things. And I use a thyroid medication. I'd like you to make something that I could use in lieu of that if there was ever an issue. And I said, that's fine, but you do the research and you send us what you want in there. Well, she did. And she really did. It's got lots of ingredients. There were teas and herbs and essential oils and homeopathics and supplements. And what we do when we do that for people is to say, we will keep half of the GANs and we will send you half, and you may do whatever you wish with it. But we would like to have the ability to share it with other people who may also benefit from the GANs, which was really a nice way to do that. We have one we're developing now. A woman in New York had called me and said, do you have anything for Lyme disease? And I said, well, no, not really, other than using the station water. She said, well, I used a holistic approach to get rid of my Lyme disease, and would you make a GANS of that? I said, you betcha. You send us what you want, we'll be glad to do it. So that's in process right now. And I'd like to ask you about the lung that we put together and how that's working for you.
Okay. Well, when I first started using the scale, the computer, to judge how many minutes of treatment I would require with the computer, I required 42 minutes of treatment on the scale for sarcoidosis, which is a lung situation. After I received the Chinese herbal GANs that you made up for me, plus whatever else you added to it, I started taking that. And I believe that was at the end of March, right about the end of March, I think. So I've been taking it April and May. The last time I checked, I only need 5 minutes of computer treatment for sarcoidosis now. So it is healing, yes. It's amazing.
That's really
Totally
nice.
amazing, yes.
Thank you.
What did you call it? Sarcoidosis?
Yes, sarcoidosis. It is a granuloma, and what it is a very tiny
I know
granular. Okay,
I know what it is.
you know what a granuloma is. Okay,
Yeah.
and it can multiply and multiply and multiply and multiply in the lungs.
Yeah.
Okay, and so now it is reduced to the point that I only need treatment even with the computer. That's all I need is 5 minutes. But I do breathe it in with the way you have it breathed in
The vinyl
with a
tubing,
concentrator.
yeah.
Yes, every night. It's on every night. I don't do it during the day. I'm too busy. But at night, it's on, and you can also put the lung formula into the bottle that attaches to a concentrator. Because a lot of people have concentrators that they breathe with. So through the night, and if it actually just kind of twists onto the concentrator, and so then the water or the air goes into that thing in there, and then into the actual mask that you're putting on your face to get oxygen. And so it's an oxygen concentrator, and I actually put it in that water that ordinarily people just use regular water. Well, you know, just to get a little bit of moisture so that they're not choking because the air is too dry. Well, but if you put the GANS water in there for lung, you're also healing your lungs at the same time. So it works beautifully.
Great.
Nice.
So we have 2 people online who have lung issues. So if they don't have a concentrator, what else, how else could they do it? Like with a steam? Can they do like a steam thing, or how would you suggest?
They can use steam, but what we suggest is get a mason jar or any big jar and put the GANS water in the jar, coil the tubing up, stick it down in the jar, the vinyl tubing. We use, what size is that?
Oh, it's aquariums.
It's very,
small.
it's
Yeah.
small. It's so that it's small enough that you could make a coil out of it, put it down in a jar, and leave one end hanging out to bring air in, and then the other end, after it's all coiled up and comes back out of the jar, is what you breathe through. You just suck air through the water, the air goes through the water into your lungs. And now there's no water in the actual air. It's just that the air gathers the plasmatic field from the water as it passes through in the tube.
That's what I have set up as well.
And that's what we suggest.
Okay.
Be innovative. Use all kinds of different things. You know, you may discover something that works really great.
Well, for somebody who might have to wear a mask, okay, take the water and the lung and spray it. Spray the mask. And like if you have to travel on an airlines, spray a mask and wear that. Because you know when you get on an airplane, you're breathing some pretty nasty soup. I guess that's all I can call it. And I want to tell you about a woman at the post office. And I was mailing a lot of orders, and we got to talking about what I was mailing. And I said, well, let me give you, I'll give you some of this. So I gave her the pads to put on her jar of water for the plasma energy station. And she's been real diligent about it. She said, I drink my water all the time, and I have it set up at home, and I bring it to work. Well, she told me one day, you know, this is like a year later, and she said, I had ulcerative colitis for 14 years. And it has completely cleared up. And she said, the last exam I had, there was one tiny area that they could say ever showed that I ever had it. And she said, if you know anybody who's ever had that condition, you'll do anything and everything to try to get some relief. Well, she had she was off for a month for carpal tunnel surgery, and she came back and she said, my hand is still sore right here. It's just, so I said, oh, I got something for you. So I gave her it was a pretty classy looking pair of gloves. It had full fingers. They were white. and she says, oh my gosh, I'll get these all dirty at work. And so I said, no, I'm going to give you 2 pair, and you can have your dirty work pair and you can have your home pair. Well, she figured out she could just wear them under plastic gloves that she wears in the back room carrying packages and things. But then what happened is she pointed to this, and Paul was with me, and he said, have you got one of our shungite magnets, which I'm going to let him talk about? And I said, yeah. And he said, give it to her. And he said, now put this on your hand under your glove tonight and leave it in place. And she did. And the next day she holds up her hand. She said, I don't have a sore hand today. And I've been carrying packages for 7 hours. So that was pretty neat. And she's wearing her gloves, you know, she's got her home sleep pair and her work pair. So, but now I'd like it, because I mentioned the shungite, and I'd like Paul to go ahead and talk about that. And maybe you'll also talk about Bob and his bees.
Okay. What you see here is epoxy mixed with shungite, which is, I don't know have you guys heard of shungite?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so you know that it's from Russia. And what it does is we mix the shungite with silver water GANs and put magnets in it. And this combination has been shown to change the torsion fields of electromagnetic frequencies that come off of your cell phones, Wi-Fi towers, your television, the cable, high cable, big cable lines that go overhead. So we're living in an electromagnetic soup. And this big one is meant to stick on your electrical panel where it comes into your house, where your breaker box is. And these are for your telephone. There's a sticker on the back where you just peel it off and it sticks on your phone. There's silver Gans water, shungite, and a magnet in an epoxy base to hold it all together.
And with that, they could also put it on laptops, iPads, computers, handheld, landline, portable phones.
Right.
Yeah, whatever's emanating.
And this is something to wear around your neck when you go out in public to change the electromagnetic fields that are coming off of everything else around you to protect yourself. And we've got a couple other ones here that have got some crystals in them for certain things. This one is lapis and the other one is Amazonite. But these are some of the latest things that we've come up with, and the reason we did is just because of all this talk of 5G and all the damage that people who use cell phones all the time are having with cancers developing from constant exposure to these electromagnetic fields. So what else did you want to talk
you
about?
also did the New Tech Frequency Relief, which is the Gans water that has several things in it, including the shungite. The shungite comes to us as a powder from Karelia, Russia, and that's the only place you can get the genuine shungite powder. And then the silver Gans, and it had some other things in with it. So again, that's something, some people were painting their exterior walls and adding shungite powder to it as a protective means. Well, I'm a pretty sloppy painter and I don't want to paint. So I'm going, well, I'm just going to take the New Tech Frequency Relief and spray the walls. There's always an easier way to do, for Lynn to do it if it involves a paintbrush. And Luke might remember one time our son is here helping us film today. We painted something in a backyard, and then when the kids and I were done, we stood in a circle and tried to clean all of us up. So
it was oil-based paint.
it was a mess. We were a mess. So
do you spray on the inside of the inside walls or the outside walls?
You could do both.
Okay.
And while you're spraying things, I took just regular plasma energy water and sprayed around the doors and windows. And I did that a couple of years ago, and then I do it in the spring. We maybe get 8 flying insects in the house from whenever it thaws where we live until the first snow flies. We don't get them. And if they come in, I'll see them for a while and then they're gone. They leave.
I just see them once and they never come around again. You know how flies are always bothering you. You just see them and they're gone.
It's a flyby. Oh, we're getting out of this place. But talk about Bob's bees, and let me ask somebody how we're doing on time. I haven't paid any attention.
It's a little after noon.
Okay. You might tell about Bob.
There's a beekeeper in Florida who I was talking to on the phone, and he lost a beehive to some kind of beetles. Some kind of beetle. I'm not a beekeeper, so I don't know what they are, but they get in the beehive and kill the bees.
Mites, I think is what
And
it is.
mites,
And,
yes.
So he lost I think he said 10,000 bees from this invasion of beetles. And so I sent him some shungite powder and some silver Gans water, and he mixed it together and put the powder in the beehive and took the water off the top and sprayed it around in the hive and around inside and outside. And he said in a week, killed all the beetles, and the bees were coming back, and they were thriving. They were doing good. So he's real happy about that. He sent me 3 quarts of in mason jars of honey. So
Yeah, he was, and Paul told him, put your powder in like a jar lid, and let the bees, and put it by the entrance, and the bees will walk through it, and they like it. And he said when he sprayed the hives with the healthy bees, he said, Bob talks about his bees. They love it. They were dancing. They were just having a little party. So the bees really liked it. And as far as the beetles, it's not generally, it's an energy that things will leave from, like we talked about the flies. And I don't know, is there a torsion field for pain? Is there a torsion field for predators that's different?
yeah, see, these are lots of unanswered questions, things we don't know the answer to yet. There's still a lot of research. The Russians are doing the biggest part of the research, and they don't always share it with us.
You might tell about your Russian pyramid.
Oh yeah, I made a Russian pyramid. The dimensions are different than the Giza pyramid. It's taller and more slender, I guess, and taller rather than squat. And so what the Russians' research has shown that what they did was they built a 70-foot high one of these with these dimensions and put their seeds in it for planting, and it increased their yields of their crops by some of them from 50 to 100%. And so what they have decided it does is that it enhances the torsion fields in the proper direction, or the plasmatic field, or the way things spin in a spiral, and it makes the seeds more healthy, so they yield more. And what I've done is I've built a pyramid using those same dimensions, and I take my finished products, whether it's GANs water, or these shungite discs, or whatever it is, and set them in this pyramid overnight. It takes about 2 hours to permanently enhance the torsion field so that it's correct. And I leave them in there about overnight, and then once they've gone through that process, take them out and use them.
How tall is your pyramid?
It's 5 feet tall, and the base is 27 inches on a side. It's 4-sided, and each side is 27 inches. And from the center to the very top is 5 feet. And then on the floor of the pyramid, I've got shungite nuggets, and I made a shungite capstone to put on the top in the form of a cone. And that also enhances the torsion field. So it's a double function pyramid.
What's the pyramid made of?
PVC pipe. It's just 4 sticks of PVC pipe with a PVC base.
And no lining on the outside?
No,
Just open.
oh, it's open.
yeah.
It's open.
Would you sit in there?
Yeah. Yeah, you could sit in it, and it's kind of small to be comfortable, because I tried it, and I could fit all right, but I was all cramped up, and I couldn't sit there very long. But you could make a bigger one using the same dimensions. I'll give you the website for the guy who got the correct dimensions from the Russians. And his name is Charlie Zeiss, Z-I-E-S-S. And his website is onlypvcpyramids.com. That's onlypvcpyramids.com.
There's a summer project, Rennie.
And he sells pyramids. He sells the kits to make them with, or he's got the dimensions right on his website for you to use if you want to do the whole thing yourself. That's what I did. I just went to the hardware store and got PVC and put it together myself.
You know, here comes the guy that's always getting that plastic tubing. Now he's here for PVC pipe. Wonder what he's doing.
So you want to increase the torsion field in your whole body, in the water of your body, basically?
Yes.
I see.
And wouldn't you also have the benefit of increasing the torsion field in your body from drinking the new tech frequency relief?
Probably. It's hard to measure any of that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, there's no instruments that I know of that are available to measure plasma energy. If there are instruments, I'm not aware of them.
Do you think a lot is your own creativity, your own creative mind? Because it boggles me that you made the GANs for the intruders and it didn't hurt the bees. How in the world did you come to that?
Right. I don't know.
Intention.
Yeah,
Must
that's
be
what I was
intention.
wondering.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, there's a lot of intention there.
That's creation.
Intention is important. Yeah.
Thank you.
And that kind of segues into something that I put up on our website. Paul and I were talking one day about, you know, what can two people do when you look around at your world and you go, it looks like a nice spring day, but maybe things are kind of a mess out there. What can two people do? And so we came up, because intention is such an important thing. And so this is what we came up with, and it's our intention and our invitation. And all plasma energy that originated from Lynn and Paul's efforts joins every other bit of plasma energy that originated from Lynn and Paul's efforts. Wherever that plasma energy is in the world, on the land, in the waters of the rivers, the lakes and oceans, in the air, and in the clouds above. All that plasma energy brings Lynn and Paul's intention everywhere, on, above, around, and below the surface of planet Earth, that all living beings are filled with love, peace, joy, freedom, and well-being, with the ethics and morality to support the love, peace, joy, freedom, and well-being of all living beings on planet Earth, including the living being, our home, planet Earth. All of like intentions are invited to join. So we hope that goes out in all the drops of water that leaves our house. And at this point, they're all over Europe, New Zealand, Australia, Thailand, Japan. Of course, Alaska's part of ours, Canada, Mexico, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Venezuela, just to name a few places where drops of water left in some manner from our place. So that's our intention, and we just hope it expands out there more and more. And saying that, I would address that Connie said this is a pretty aware group. And she mentioned to me that there was somebody in the biggest city in the state we live in, about an hour away from where we live, and we're in a little town. And it has summer tourist traffic, but other than that, that road closes. And she said, I'm seeing a lot of unusual activity. I'm seeing a lot of military style vehicles. I went to Walmart the other day to get something, a charger for my cell phone. There was none in the store. The department was wiped clean. And she said there are a very large number of Chinese people that she's seeing around town, which I thought was very odd given the state that we live in. And so I look at this as, this is our first, our first capability. And what I've done is put together different packages, so you can buy things singly from us, you can buy it in groups. And I have something I call the Plasma Energy Pantry, where you buy this and 25 of the vials that we have. So it's just a way of getting things out there to facilitate things for other people if that need should arise. And if the need doesn't arise, we still have something very useful for ourselves. Yes.
Can you talk about the protection aspect of it?
Yes, thank you. I meant to mention that. And what I did, I took the Plasma Energy Station water. You could take your Peace water, whatever you decide, and I put it in little bitty travel things about the size of a Carmex container. I do some things about the way I paint. A big tablespoon, my little jar, and I went around the perimeter of our property, and maybe every 20 feet, I just dug a shallow hole, put the little thing in there, covered it over with dirt and rocks. Doesn't matter if it freezes, which it's going to where we live, it does not matter, because those energy fields are there. If it got stomped on and broken, or somebody drove over it, the energy fields are still there. And so I did that around the property. And the reason I did that, on my website, plasmaenergysolution.com, there's a blog I wrote in November of 2018, I believe. Either 2017 or 2018, but look at the blogs. And it talks about Dominica and when Hurricane Maria hit there. And a man had done a jar of plasma energy of what he put together and taken to his parents there. And he was doing their garden and things around the house and everything, but he stuck this jar in their garden. Well, when he finally got to Dominica, and there was no communication, and it took him a couple weeks to get there, and he sent videos out, their garden was completely intact. Not a flower was off the bushes, not a leaf was off the plant. Their home was intact. Everything was intact for about a 30-foot radius. And I told you how I had doused the energy. And right outside of that, their sheds were destroyed and the trees were completely stripped. It was a barren wasteland. 90% of the Dominica was destroyed. So it creates somewhat of a dome effect around your property. And I have a friend who lives in an apartment complex. She said, well, I'm going to take patches out. And she put them out under the rocks. Well, the landscapers came and took her patches out from under the rocks. And she says, well, now what? And I said, you put that out and go spray the rocks. And she did. We're pointing, and we've got several things filming. That's what Paul's pointing out. So she sprayed the rocks around there. I said, they're not going to remove the rocks. So the plasma energy is just going to be right there. So there's always a way to think of another way to get your goal accomplished. And so I heartily recommend doing that. One thing we did with the CO2 only, we took that energy water and put it in a little pill vial and put it on our enclosed front porch, which is not heated. Well, where we are, it gets to 22 below. It never froze all winter long. And we had been told, use that water on your gloves, your socks, your scarves, your winter apparel to prevent frostbite.
CO2 only.
Yeah, and it was CO2 only. And I even put a vial inside of a short jar of water. The jar was about this big, but I put about that much water surrounding the vial. That never froze all winter long. So it's pretty amazing when you see what can happen with this energy. Paul, if you don't have anything else, we'd like to open it up for anybody who has questions. And I know Kirsten does. I see there's a question mark sitting over here, and right next to us another question mark. Yeah.
Well, I would love to go into some of the more health-related issues. So specifically kidneys. One of the questions was, so potassium, protein, phosphorus are things that the kidneys shouldn't be receiving when you're at, a severe stage of kidney disease. Taking it in the energy form, I'm assuming, is not damaging to the kidneys. Is that correct?
You want to?
I don't know. I don't know if that's correct or not.
Okay.
But why don't you talk about your lab reports?
I had the kidney failure, and right now I'm living on a transplant. So
From 2004.
yeah, it's been 15 years since I had that transplant. And my creatinine clearances is the test they use to determine your level of kidney function. And mine was slowly going up. Right after transplant, it was 1.6. And slowly through the years, it started going up. It was at 2.2 when I started using plasma energy. And at 2.4, you're thinking about getting another transplant. So it was getting pretty severe. And I started using plasma energy pads, which I'll show you one. I wear in my shirt. I wear this one in front, and I got another one in back. And my laboratory reports now show my creatinine clearance at 1.5, which is better than it was right after the transplant. So the plasma energy has not restored my kidneys to their full function, but it has helped my transplanted kidney to keep working, whereas by now it would have quit if I hadn't been using the plasma energy.
you had a specific recipe. Can you repeat that again? It's like 45% of one, 45% of another, or something like that, or 47 and a half.
I don't remember
Okay.
what it
I
is.
think it was CO2 and zinc.
It's CO2, zinc, CH3, but I don't remember the proportions. I've got it written down at home.
Do you have a write-up of all your developments and what each one does anywhere?
Yeah, I've got it all written down in a notebook at home.
Well,
Okay.
we have it, Rennie.
we do?
There are little slips for each one.
Okay.
Everything that we send out, I try to send out a write-up on it. Now, we don't list absolutely everything that might be in something. Maybe, would we say some of it's proprietary, or some of it we just didn't list on it. And the other thing I would mention is your diabetes treatment. Paul was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 44. There's no history of diabetes in the family. Okay, so we kind of go back to the day in the Army when he was going to ship out for Germany, when they walked through a tent and they were shot down the line full of vaccines down both arms. And, you know, what did that set up in his body that, you know, led to the failure later? But at this point, what is your insulin usage? Because that's been affected.
It's gone from 34 units a day to 16. So my insulin requirement has decreased by 50%.
So that's a good thing. Yeah.
And then the other question is about, you know, a cancer regimen. If somebody does have developed a cancer, you know, what would you recommend to support that?
Depends on where the cancer is. Okay.
Talk about a breast cancer first, and then we can.
There's, are those photographs still online?
They should be. I don't know. I may have had them in the blogs at one point, and I'd have to look back. We're talking about some photographs that were taken of a breast cancer responding to the treatment with plasma energy done by someone else.
Anyway, what they did was they took 2 patches, one with CO2 and zinc, doubled, and then the other one was CO2 and zinc, just a single layer, and put them on each side of the breast, and the tumor inside sloughed out. And they show serial photographs of it, and it swole up and turned red, and then the skin separated, and the whole tumor looked like a cauliflower came out and was just hanging there, and finally it all came loose and fell out, and then the breast healed up with hardly any scar at all, and now it looks normal.
There was also discussion around that application of having a blood test that would look for heavy metals, because often what may show up is a high amount of calcium or a high amount of mercury. Right. And so when people are able to get that kind of a blood test and isolate, what they were trying to do was then isolate what kind of a GANs would you make to go along with that treatment. But the CO2 and the zinc is pretty much going to address no matter what was indicated on the blood test. Would
Right.
you say? Yeah.
And would you do that with other cancers? Like we have a friend who has one right in his hip. I mean, it literally is bulging out. You would do that double up patch CO2 zinc?
Yes, that's the way I would do it if it were me.
Mm-hmm. What if it's in the bones?
You know, I don't see, just from my personal view, I don't see why it wouldn't work. It's going to take some time, but for me, chemotherapy is not a choice. I wouldn't do chemo myself. So,
Would you
I
also-
would try it.
Would you also drink the water and what you were talking about with the pajamas, the sheets, the clothing, the towels, really embrace?
Yeah, use it for
everything.
everything. Use the water to make your soup, your coffee, drink it all day long. Wear the patches. Just soak your underwear in it.
Yeah, I did.
I do.
You know?
Everything is soaked.
Sounds like you can't overdo it.
Yeah.
That's right. It's not going to hurt.
The body takes what it wants, right? Sorry.
Right.
In the breast example, how long did it take for that mass in the breast to come out? Was that a short period of time or a long period of time? Do you have any idea about how long that?
It wasn't a real long period of time. I think, if I remember correctly, it took about 3 weeks
What?
for that tumor to slough.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's faster than the black salve.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, the thing about black salve is
The pain.
it hurts like heck. I see this scar right here. That's black salve.
Yeah, I got a small one here.
And my whole eye swole
This
up.
was black
And
salve too.
I had edema all the way down my face. My whole face was swollen. I had a black eye.
It's funny, mine didn't hurt though. Mine was swollen like hell. You were the one who should have seen how I looked like.
We
But it's
didn't have the water at the time, and it is gone.
Well, one of the things I suggest, though, if you do go that route, is then you're dealing later with the healing of the scar and everything. That's where you can use the water, and you could also even make a combination like the eye drops with some oil, maybe jojoba or something that's a really good skin oil on top of plasma water. Shake it up, let the water activate the oil, and then use the oil. You could make it into kind of a salve, just depending on how creative you are. And I'm going to discuss something real quickly that sometimes when you're looking for an innovative approach, Paul at one point, when he was on dialysis, and that was for 8 years, they did surgery on your arm. I think you had an infection or something with one of your access points, and it was a mess. And we're looking and going, they said, okay, well, just change your bandages at home and stuff. And we're looking, what are we going to use? And having a clinic, you used to always have all kinds of supplies on hand. Well, no clinic any longer. So I said, I know just the thing. And so now women are probably going to know what this is. You take a bigger one
they're
of these
wonderful.
and you have an injury on your arm, and you have something that's treated with the plasma energy water, and you can put that right around the whole arm and have something that will stay in place. So there's a lot of creative things that you can do. Just think outside of the box. How can I solve this problem? The people that have the rotator cuff issues, they can go to the X Band-Aid and the single Band-Aid and work with it that way. Paul the other night from driving down here, he said, man, I got a stiff neck. And I said, well, we have something for that. Where's your Band-Aids? So we've got an X over here and a single over here. And he got up in the morning. I said, "So how's your neck?" He said, "Oh, I forgot all about it." Forgot all about it means it doesn't hurt.
I need to tell you about herpes, the herpes water then.
I have
I
a couple
had a
questions.
lady who had genital herpes. And I said, okay. I gave her the herpes water and she soaked feminine pads and wore them. Herpes was gone.
Awesome.
So
This
that's
is
another way to
genital
use-
herpes?
Yes, genital herpes.
That's outstanding.
Basic.
Yes,
Yes, it was.
Mm.
because we all know that's a real tough issue.
It is. It's a tough issue for most people.
Does it get rid of the underlying virus or just that outbreak?
How long has it been? Did it come back?
Not that I'm aware of. She was pregnant at the time and she's had her baby, and I haven't talked to her since then. She's had difficulty coming for her SCIO treatments, but I recommended that to her. She used it and she's fine. Best of my knowledge. I don't know whether, I think it would probably take herpes water and SCIO treatment together, because that's how I treat myself. I think it would probably take both to kill the actual herpes virus.
Yeah. See, I don't know. I don't have that answer.
Yeah,
I
and
know copper oxide will kill bacteria, fungus, spirochetes, and
Is that in the detox formula?
no,
copper oxide,
No,
it's in a lot of the
it's in a lot of
formulas.
them.
Yeah, okay.
You'll see it CuO2. Do you need a drink of water?
Yeah.
Some right there. Yeah, you'll see the copper oxide in a lot. And if we feel a cold coming on, he's got a combination that's similar to that little jar of GANs he showed you. It may have a couple of other things, and we'll get some water out of that and drink it, and generally that arrests what was going to turn into, you know, your winter cold or whatever. And we don't have to deal with the whole 3 days, 5 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
and it stops the cough.
Yeah.
Drinking that water, just
Yeah.
immediately cough is gone.
So we have a question online from Far. Far, do you have a question?
I do. I'm muted.
Yeah, you're unmuted. Can you hear her?
We'll repeat the question.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. A couple of questions. I know you spray with a plastic water bottle. Can you infuse water with the patches in a plastic water? Does it need to be glass? That's kind of a basic question.
Okay, so the
Plastic
question
versus-
is whether you can use water from the plastic bottle or the glass bottle. And one of the things people kind of freak out over plastic, this and that. And what the scientist who was teaching all this said at the time is, don't forget that plastic is made out of carbon, and so are you. And there's somewhat of a compatibility. Now, what we say is that it needs to be translucent. So this is colored, but you can see inside of it. If it was opaque, this is not. If you were setting up your energy station and you had your vials on the outside, you do not want an opaque stainless steel crockery. That is not going to be effective. You've got to have clear or translucent glass or plastic for your containers.
Okay.
Is there another question?
I guess, yes, the other, obviously the whole cancer thing, because I have multiple tumors on my left chest wall, and then I have another pretty large tumor in my right breast, along with various places in my bones, etc. But those also genital herpes, which is another virus. I'm on an oral chemo right now, which is pretty strong, but it has been very helpful. I mean, it's kind of brought me back from the brink of, transitioning, I would say. So I guess, the right formula, like the CO2, I guess would draw out multiple tumors. It's not just one. It's what it is, which has kind of been a little disheartening, is there's been about 4, I want to say, babies popped up in the last probably 30 days or so. So it's trying to progress, and I need to kind of stop it as soon as possible. The other thing is just, I think taking this chemo has knocked my immune system, which like now it's a continual battle for the herpes, because it's, I'm actually taking acyclovir prophylactically, just because it's, one thing's knocking another thing. So it's kind of this vicious circle of just trying to make it through the day, basically, and still have intention with trying to serve the greater good, I guess. So that's me. That's my quick story. Any recommendations, I guess?
Okay, so the question that came in was for breast cancer. In one breast, there's some tumors on the chest wall. There are other areas of cancer in the body. There's an issue of disease, along with dealing with the current therapy that she is being given. And so how could she address, say, with the as we talked about, the CO2 and the zinc GANS water formula with her situation?
Just what we said.
Yeah.
Okay, just do it that way. Well, as she was talking, one of the things I was thinking is she had a blanket around her, and it would be effective if that blanket had been had the water added to it, and the clothing that she's in. And what Louise just had to say about the herpes and how someone was able to take care of that. So I think it's, when you have multiple things, it's going to be a multiple pronged approach, and it's going to be important to drink the water, because you're in a situation where a lot's going on that you're trying to overcome. Yeah.
I had a question. It's eluding me. The other thing is like I guess because there's a pretty large tumor on my my left chest wall. Is I have a non-healing wound that hasn't healed since I had a mastectomy, basically, like a year and a half ago. So to spray the, I guess, gauze or bandages and apply that on the wound directly, I think would be a really good idea.
So yes, and the question here was, what about applying to a wound? It may have been a surgical wound that hadn't healed all the way, so she could apply, she could spray water on cloth or gauze or whatever was appropriate to put on that area and place there. And you may want to think about the application that you use. Can you find something with a little bit of adhesive so you're not wrapping something around your whole body or trying to hold it on or whatever?
Yeah.
So just
be a bandage.
Yeah, be creative with how you approach that. And one thing that Paul found for himself, having the imbalance in his body made his skin itch, which may be a potassium deficiency or something. But he said, I'll put some lotion on, after a shower. My skin itches. Well, slather him with lotion. It still itched, right? So it was coming from the inside out itch, I guess. Now when he showers, he takes, it's a bottle of CO2 and zinc, right?
Right.
And he just sprays it all over his body when he's done, lets it air dry. He hasn't used any lotion. The itching stopped. So it was an imbalance itch and not a dry skin itch.
Is the Peace formula that? The CO2 and zinc?
Yes, it is.
Any other questions? Go
Do you
ahead.
have anything in the way of neuropathy and multiple sclerosis? That would be my two questions. I have a client who had an accident and she's paralyzed from the waist down, but she's in constant pain, her whole body. Would this be something that would be helpful for her?
We have a neuropathy formula that I made up.
Yeah, and we did have a woman who started with just the plasma energy station water who had neuropathy, and she started spraying her legs and feet, and she said the pain quit. She was very happy over that. So again, it's the imbalance and somehow bringing the balance to it with the plasma energy.
And you said something about
Multiple sclerosis.
multiple sclerosis, and that's a really, really tough one. I don't know anybody who's had success with that. I think there may be some things you can do that would alleviate some of the symptoms, but I don't think you're gonna get rid of it.
That was a discussion with the scientist who was teaching.
Yeah.
And he said there could be some underlying emotional factors that make it very tough with that particular condition.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
This particular case, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and if you can alleviate things, bring about small improvement, if it's embraced, that's the main thing. And
Some people just won't accept it.
yeah.
There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
So any other questions? Oh, Rennie.
This is a suggestion. In the field of subtle energy, there is one instrument on Earth that can measure subtle energy. It's the only one that I know, and I don't think there'll be any other one developed in our lifetime. And that's the human body. So the human body obviously is not for everybody. It's a person that can activate all 14 senses. Humans basically have shut down 9 of their senses. But there are quite a few people who, have sonar in their ears and radar in their forehead. And they're working with other senses. They may not consciously understand how they're doing it, but let's just say telepathy or healers, long distance healers sometimes, You have to be mindful and pick and choose and get evidence, but in the work that you're doing, it could have merit to put together a team of 3 to 5 intuitive people who basically are asked the question, is the herpes virus going to go dormant, or is it going to be, basically be ended by this combination of Gans water? And you don't basically let anybody talk to each other. That's just the question that goes out to your group of 5. And when you start to get 4 out of 5 saying one thing, you're really on to something. You've got a tool now to start to, can MS be dealt with by any known means? And, your group of 5 comes back and says, it's never happened before, but yes, it can. And then you can test different ingredients. Absolutely. It's not only just the emotional level, it's the subconscious mind, the unconscious mind, the DNA. I mean, there's so many things that we have no idea about, but the body has the ability to track down everything and get answers. So it could be an added thing to your research department, you know, as you go forward to think about that.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. And you do that to some extent when you're putting formulas together.
I don't really ask anybody, except I do use dowsing rods, and to get the proportions, the correct proportions of the different GANS waters to add to make a combination.
Right. Yeah. Well, there you go. I mean, that's basically accessing your body intelligence. And the body is not the same as your awareness. These are two different species. So the biological system is a whole system unto itself, and that's who is your instrument. And you're doing it on your own. I'm just saying there's some people in your own network right now, you know, people who are using the water right now who are pretty advanced, who are pretty good, you know.
Yeah.
They can get out of the way and basically, you know, you're just really asking for yes or no. It's really what you're asking for, you know. You're not, doesn't have to be a whole lot of detail. You can go to the end of the universe with yes or no. I mean, that's just one thing leads to another.
Right.
It's really great, you know. So dowsing is good, you know, but you know, a team like that could really be very cool for you, you know, to have a support group that you know, could help with questions. And so, you know, it'll save time too, actually. And there's probably a group that'd be willing to volunteer and do it. You know?
Needs to be a group.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That is a great idea. Yes. And I suspect there are some sitting around. So, well, thank you very much. Are there any more questions that anybody has? Yeah.
Just one, there's such a plethora of information here. Where does one actually start?
Our website.
Your website, okay.
On our website, what we've done is we have articles, we have long videos, we have short videos. They go anywhere from information videos for 3 or 4 minutes to the first workshop we ever did that was 2 hours. And then there's videos in between where I talk how to set up your station, how to make the patches. There are testimonials, there are frequently asked questions. So we try to keep adding to that. We had an interview last week with a woman in Germany, and she said, I'm so sorry that your website isn't in German because you have so much information. And so she was interviewing it and was going to translate for her German audience. And, you know, unfortunately, I write in English and that's about it.
Thank you.
So you're welcome.
And then one of the things I found out too with pain in the body is I can hold on to a vial. Just hold on to a vial. If for instance, if I have some osteoarthritis stuff coming up in my hips, and I'll hold on to the pain relief vial, and within 20 minutes the pain is gone. I don't have to drink the water. I don't have, but I hold the intention as I'm holding the vial that the pain relief will go exactly where it needs to go into the hip area and mitigate the pain, and it does. So that means I don't have to drink it. I don't have to do anything other than hold the vial.
Oh no, drink water.
No, not that I wouldn't. I'm not saying that I wouldn't, because you know I do drink the water, and that's always, you know, a tremendous help. But I was just experimenting, holding on to the vial, having a just strong intention, and the work is amazing. Just holding on to the vial.
I actually wear it.
Oh, see, you're doing
It's
a
jewelry.
thing.
Oh, wow.
So you're doing a similar thing.
It's it's a
Just a
vial.
little thing that
It
you
has peace and anxiety in it.
Ha!
Nice.
So I mix whatever I want. And it just unscrews.
Do you change it like every week or just whatever?
When
No?
it starts to disappear,
Ah,
it just
Yeah, same
unscrews.
thing.
yeah.
Nice.
Can sit right between the boobs. Sorry,
Oh,
guys.
oh, yes, and you can get them at Hobby Lobby. They have a lot of different
Yeah.
pretty vials like this.
Nice.
Some silver, some gold, and so I wear them with other things.
Oh, that's
Oh,
cool.
that's a great
Wear it.
idea.
I wear it.
And don't forget about your pets,
Oh, yes,
because
they drink it.
we give the water to our cats. We have one cat that had a rough beginning and hissed her way through her first couple years. And she's relaxed pretty much on the hissing now. She used to just run away when the door opened and anybody came in, and now she comes out and investigates. But one of the things I did is I put in an anxiety vial in their water dish. And they have the station water, but I thought, one day I just thought, that might help her out. And she's actually kind of jumped in our laps a couple times, and it's like, oh, wow. I guess things are changing for her.
I put a parasite vial in their base water.
Good, yes.
So that we can address the parasites all the time.
Good, that's excellent.
My cat loves the water,
Oh,
and
yes.
he's very picky. I used to be able to scoop it out with a plastic cup and put it down, and now he likes, no, I'll open the jar and he comes right over and he drinks it right out of the jar. And right now his favorites are the New Tech. He drinks a lot of the New Tech, and then he also drinks, I have a combination of the pain relief, the arthritis relief, and the inflammation relief in one jar. And those are his two go-to places. He also loves the station water, so but not from anything but the main, have to take the jar off. So he goes straight for he's very I don't know.
Picky?
But what am I supposed to do?
Well, cats usually find people very trainable.
That's true.
Yeah.
And then also, I used to not let him out because he got into fights all the time. And now I have my whole property has got the water all around it. And so I let him out in the morning, and he stays in my yard.
Mm-hmm.
And he just feels it's like home to him. It's like being outside is like being inside. It's safe. And it's really wonderful because he gets nurtured being outside and he's safe.
Nice.
Yeah, the pet one, the anti-scratch one.
Uh-huh.
I mean, my cat Mystic had her ears raw from scratching. It's gone.
So the pet skin relief really helped her.
Mhm.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah.
What are the elements you use for anxiety?
I have that downstairs in my notebook I brought a notebook that I have all my information in of the handouts, and I'll be glad to give that to you.
It's mainly zinc oxide.
That addresses the emotion the most, isn't it? The zinc oxide gas.
Right.
Yeah.
That addresses emotions in general,
Yes.
fear.
Yeah.
I don't know. I imagine.
Yeah.
That would add to the underlying anxiety. So I would think so.
Yeah.
I don't know.
My sense is that the biggest issue facing the human race in the next few years is going to be fear. Fear moving into hysteria, and that anything in the fear area will be welcome relief. So I might be able to work with you on ways to do that besides CO2.
Zinc oxide.
The zinc.
Or
Zinc oxide.
Zinc, sorry.
I'm reminded of a Hi and Lois cartoon years ago, and Lois was coming in the house. Hi is saying, no, Lois, don't do it. And she's got a fire hose over her shoulder because she's going to clean up after the toddlers at the table. And I'm thinking, how do you address such a big amount of fear? And again, I think it's going to have to be through our intention and what we are as walking containers that hopefully we can emanate some of that anxiety relief to others around us. And for me, it's staying out of the oh my gosh, listen to what's going on now mode. It's I want to have awareness of what's going on around me without being drug under by it. And
Good plan.
yeah, it's noble words, you know. Whether I can live up to it or not is another thing, but
Yeah. So we're all in that boat.
yeah, exactly. So, Louise?
I need to go.
Okay, well, we thank you so much for being here, everybody, and thank you for your questions, and thank you for making the space available and for being here, and for your help in filming. Thank you.